Jim, there could be no better place to start than right at the beginning. And I know it's a story you've told a million times, but you're a ski bum. You're having the greatest time of your life. You're just loving life, and you get that draft notice, and lo and behold, you get called to Vietnam. I mean, it's an old story, man, but I mean, we have to tell it. So you lose your legs to a landmine, you come home, and now you've got to figure out, how does a guy who's been so active in sport and so just energetic with his life, how do you rebuild your life? And it's only 1968. Those must have been tough times back then.
Hey, Bob, it really was. I think I was a little bit fortunate because even though what you just described, the landmine took my legs and all that kind of stuff, um, I I ended up going to Japan for a month, and 1 month in Japan, then I flew they flew us all out, and there were lots of amputees at that time. That war was doing that, and they flew us out to Long Beach to the VA hospital, but it was being remodeled, so they sent us all to Madigan Hospital in Washington State, Tacoma, which is Fort Lewis, sick 15, 20 minutes from my house, in Sumter, Washington, where I grew up. So, I had all these guys on the ward with amputations. We got to be good friends, but all my friends and coaches and family would come out to Madigan and visit out there, and I think that that was a big plus for me. It helped a lot because it gave me a chance to, it just kind of slowly get back to what it was gonna be like to be an amputee. The other good thing was I wasn't getting, treated bad as some of my veteran friends got when they got back to the United States because the war was not one that we got much
Yeah,
greetings.
it didn't have a lot of popularity.
No, no, but I didn't have that because, my coach, football, basketball, and baseball coaches came out and they brought me a Polaroid camera. Now, what are you gonna do with a guy that's Polaroid camera? Well, my wounds were not sewn up immediately, so I thought, "Well, shoot, what are you gonna take so they unwrapped my legs at least 3 or 4 times a day at first, and the bone was sticking out the end of my stumps, the residual limb to get, the right word, and so I would take take the Polaroid camera and stick it to the end of my bed and take pictures of my so I was doing a selfie of my stumps, and, but then when all my friends would come, they had already wrapped all that stuff up. They didn't have me in there with looking at my bones sticking out the end of bone, flesh, and skin. So I'd come in, my some of my old girlfriends and, "Hey, what do you think this is?" "Oh, I don't know," and they'd show 'em oh, god, some of them would go running out to throw up, and that was my even though I was looking like I was doing good, I was still suffering inside. I had no clue what my life was gonna be like.
Yeah, Jim, and that's an interesting thing because I saw a number of pictures of you from that era, maybe in and or around that time, and for the most part, you had a pretty good smile on your face, and I know that we all wore those smiles a little roughly, but even though it was a tough time, it just didn't seem to me like you were taking it on in a very bitterly kind of manner. Like I could see you are already brewing and stewing as to how you were going to move forward and do something better with your life.
Yeah, and Bob, that's true. I went through, I went through a real I was so confused. I finally got dismissed from the hospital and went home, went back to my house in Sumner. My parents have a cabin in the mountains, and they'd spend a lot of time up there with our horses. We had horses, we rented them out, and I'd stayed at home, but I spent the first 7, 8 months just pretty much living in Riverside Tavern, downtown Sumner, and I just didn't know what to do, very confused, and it's funny because I always have kind of a sense of humor, and I think the sense of humor help people feel comfortable to be around me, and, you could be dying inside and make somebody laugh,
Right.
and the more I drank, the more, comfortable I got with myself. I didn't like I didn't know that I didn't like myself. I don't know, it's really I can't explain it. Um,
No, I think you're explaining it quite well because, even though you've got the amputation, I got the spinal cord injury. I mean, we went through a similar thing at a very similar time. I was 19, you were what?
21
20,
actually, yeah.
same thing, so it became a big part of our socialization, but it was strange, Jim, and I think that you could probably relate to this too. I wasn't the greatest rehab patient. They were always trying to drag me in from doing something wrong, climbing out of a cab and not coming home from, back to the hospital with passes, but I think in a way, maybe even though, it was a tough time for us and maybe we did take it out in strange ways with a la alcohol or whatever, um, it also made us bold. I think that that's part of the reason that, we fought our way out of this.
No, Bob, that is so true. I, um, I can't really put my finger on it. I know all that what you're saying and what I'm saying, uh, it just somehow I wanted to move forward in my life. I wanted to get a job. I never wanted not to work. I worked my whole life. We never had a lot of money growing up, so for me to ski, I had to raise money. Um, to to buy gas for the car, dad and mom didn't give me gas for a car. I had a 50 Ford, 1950 Ford. I cherried it out before I went to Vietnam, give it to my brother, and, I just I wasn't sure what kinda job was I gonna get? Was I ever gonna work? How about dating? How's that gonna work? I mean, just all this silly stuff that that you really question, and if somebody watches this podcast, they need to believe that you can move forward, and fortunately, I did, and I'm thankful for it, and,
Hey,
it's,
Jim, I could sit here and talk about this all day because you and I have been down a very similar road at a different time. But I want to kick this right into sport because you are a sport icon. Whether I think you've been told that enough that you have to understand that you were very, very meaningful to the adaptive world. Upon finally getting, through a few of the doldrums and the really hard times, you played a little basketball, as did I. But then one day, someone got you a form of racing chair, antiquated as it may have been. That was the catalyst. That was the real start for you, wasn't it?
yeah, it's funny because we didn't nobody at my time, nobody gave us, we didn't have racing chairs, and we knew nothing about them. So, what happened to me, I started playing wheelchair basketball and, loved this sport. I, came back home and I came to my wife and I go, "Whoa, that is the most fun I've had in years," because I was going through that 9 months or almost a year of not doing anything, so I had blisters on my hands, and the chairs weighed 65 pounds. Most of the guys either have an Everest or Jennings or a stainless medical product,
Right.
and
Those were the
and
2.
yeah, and one of the guys in the team said, "We could put a little bit of camber," so we had this little thing we put on the cross members. They all folding chairs. Nobody had a rigid chair. Took it apart, put that together, and it just kind of snowballed, and then in 1970s, I was hurt in '68. 1970s, I started this basketball stuff and racing wheelchair. They didn't have any but they had all these fun runs, and I thought, "Wow, this is so cool," and so I got involved in fun runs, uh, 5Ks, worked my way up to 10Ks, and then finally up to marathon. But again, it was in a 65-pound Everest or stainless medical product wheelchair, folding mechanism, and I went down to Nike OTC at Eugene, Oregon, and ran that marathon in 3 hours and 3 minutes in an everyday chair.
That's a long time, huh?
I know, and I got done, and my wife, came up and I didn't drink enough water. I did everything wrong. It was a hot day, and I was supposed to say hi to the guys that one of the guys that paraplegic play basketball was at the, fire station as I went by. I don't remember going by. Got to the finish line, my wife came up, and she said, "Great, good job." And I just everything just went black. And it just told me, I said and they fortunately, I was in a wheelchair, they just pushed me over to the tent, and before they had IVs, so I started drinking water. I mean, I was out, and I go, "I could do this. I gotta do this. I love this sport." And I liked it because you got alongside of able-bodied people, and you're just part of the gang,
No,
you
no,
know?
exactly.
Yeah.
I understand exactly what you're saying. So then you start to work a little bit more on trying to develop a chair, and you come up with a 24-pound box frame, which I thought was really intriguing because this was about the stage where maybe somebody gave me some pile of metal from the side of their house, and the chair looked a little bit like that. But you won for the first now you've moved from your little town runs to the Boston Marathon. 1981, you win the Boston Marathon. What was that like? I mean, that trip down Boylston, do you think in some ways that was symbolic of the ultimate moment where you moved on in life and something became greater than your disability?
Well, I think, Bob, it was before that, is actually there was a bunch of guys by the name of Rick Hansen and Ron Miner and they were really good athletes,
Bobby
and,
Hall,
Bob Hall, and then you had Lewis and, Lewis Bear and, Dean
Dean
Barrett and,
Barrett.
and just on and on and
Yeah.
on. I could tell you they were good athletes. Jimmy Hernandez, they were great athletes. Some guys were running the 100-meter in a everyday wheelchair with phenomenal times. But I went to, up to Vancouver, Canada to the Seawall Marathon, and I knew all those guys were there. And I ended up getting the photo on the front of the, um, Sports and Subs magazine, which was pretty cool, and I went it a 2 hours and 23-minute marathon, and I'm going, "Whoa, this is fun," and that you just didn't get to go to the Boston Marathon, you had to actually
Qualify.
qualify, and I did, and I went back in '70, and I finished 2nd behind, Kurt Brankman and George Murray, Kurt Brink and I were battling it out, and Kurt got me at the end, and I went back home the next year and just trained really, really even more, with more, vigor and energy, and ended up winning it in 1981. I mean, it was unreal, unreal coming around all that snow fencing and at the end and just every part. I mean, I know every inch of that race. I could run it today in my mind, come around that end, and man, it was unreal, unreal.
Hey, Jim, so about that time, you start to think there's a real opportunity here to make these products better. Many sports are starting to develop at this point. We're starting to see tennis. We're starting to see higher end basketball. We're starting to see racing take a really prominent place. Just all in general, people are trying more and more things. And you go out to start the company Magic in Motion. You want to start to make the product better. And as story goes, you go to the bank and basically they tell you in a nutshell that they can't give you the loan. They just can't justify it because there's no way that you could show them a profit. Well, you got the last laugh, buddy.
Yeah, well, that's true. It's funny you found that out. Um, what I had to do is I finally was able to use my house as collateral, which was crazy, but I really believed in these products. I really believe that people with disabilities wanted to compete. The bank, they just couldn't understand that. So I got a really good line of credit and I started really small. I started in the back of my garage and I'd get up in the morning and I'd call the East Coast to somebody that needed a chair and most of my advertisement was done in sports and spokes, which was the biggest way to advertise in paraplegic news.
Yep.
So I I called somebody in the East Coast and and then I would work with them, and then I'd call people in the Midwest, and then I'd call people on the West Coast and follow time, but that night, I'd go out and work in the garage, and I subcontract everything out at first. Didn't have a welder, didn't do any of that stuff, just hired really good people and subcontract. So, I would be out in the garage would be full of boxes and chairs, and I mean, it was just it was but you know what? The biggest thing was I I have to say that I absolutely loved and mean it with all my heart, I loved the people that I was building wheelchairs for. I mean, I saw so many incredible stories, kids, adults, newly injured, old injuries. It just you can't even you know, when you think about sometimes people when they have a disability, "I don't wanna be around anybody with disability because I don't wanna be part of that gang." That is the best gang that I've ever been around in my life. We'd go to races in Ohio and sit on the floor and measure wheelchairs. I won the Peachtree Road Race and didn't make it to my award because I was fitting people for wheelchairs. So I don't know, just crazy.
No, 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 they were all good times, and we could definitely sit here and reflect on those forever, but I got a few events I wanna talk to you about, and, some of them are good, some not so good, but I'm gonna go back to the 1984 games in Los Angeles, and I gotta imagine that this is still a sore that sits around on your shoulder you keep picking at forever. So, you're in the exhibition or the demonstration event for the first time, you roll out onto the track in Los Angeles, and I've always been a little bit curious about this myself. So, 8 of the elite guys in the world, bang, gun goes off. Jim Martinson decides he's gonna run 1,500 meters faster than anybody in the world. You were out in front of everybody by, like, 100 meters. You ended up finishing dead last.
And
Tell
not
me
only did
about that. What happened in that race, Jim?
not only did last, I mean, it was incredible. It's really funny because I'm really glad you brought it up because I I've had a lot of things happen in my life with a lot of success, and sometimes the thing that really hurts the most is in 1984 in Los Angeles, California, uh, Carl Lewis had just came off the track in front of us and set a new world record in the 100 meters. Um, I mean, I can go on, it's the whole story, but there's a what ended up happening is that, I had done up close and personal with Frank Gifford, and I had won in New York, I had won 1st place in our division, and IBM actually paid me money for a you had to be careful with that back then,
Right.
uh, for a poster they did, and that poster is so the guys are all behind me. We're all looking really muscular. So I get to Los Angeles, uh, I'm in the village. We have a very limited time to be able to train. So I go out of the little track with the other Americans, Randy Snow and, oh, forgive me, I can't think of his name, John Rodolph.
Right, John.
Yeah,
Yep.
so we were out the track. Mary Decker, I'm passing names out because I don't know remember a lot of names, but Mary Decker, she's running the opposite way in the track.
Yeah.
That was her I don't know why she did that, but sh so we're trying to go around track. So I pick up a sprint, I'm going down the backstretch, come in the corner, sprint again, next back. I go around the 3rd corner, and all at once I go, "Geez, my wheel's rubbing." I thought, "No, what the heck?" So I'm looking at I thought, "Do I have a flat tire?" Whatever. So I go take off, and I pull over, and I'm an amputee, so I jump out, and holy mackerel, the right r corner of my frame is cracked. So I mean, I go, "Oh, man, I've only got 3 more days before I have to compete."
Right.
So I called Frank Gifford, and he calls Howard Cosell. So Howard Cosell sends his limousine. This is a true story.
This is
He's
this is crazy, Jim.
I know.
Go.
He sends his limousine to pick me up, to take me to a guy in a welding shop in Los Angeles, California. So I'm driving in a Howard Cosell's limousine. I go to this welding shop, and you know a lot about chairs, and so people that don't, we need to have no toe in and no toe out.
Right.
We need to have, and I knew that I was strong enough and I trained so well enough that I should be able to do well and and just hang with these guys, if nothing else. So, I didn't have a chance, I got it welded, go home, back to the dorm or the place we were staying, go out, train a little bit around the neighborhood. There's not even a neighborhood at the college
Mhm.
where we were at,
Yep.
and I think, "Well, it's gotta be alright." And the gun goes off, and, the guy that won the race,
Paul Van Winkle,
Paul Van
Belgium.
Winkels, he's on number 8, and I'm on number 1, and I go, "Gee, look at him go. Nobody's going." So I take off like crazy, and all the other guys, the other 6 guys are back behind, and I get to the corner, and I feel like I'm stuck. I feel like, "What the heck? I don't have any I can't go." And the harder and sometimes the harder you push, the more mental it gets.
Yep.
So I ended up the other 6 guys, one by one, they all go by me, and I'm just going, "Oh," and I'm just heartbroken, and I've been watching the Olympics, and I see Michaela Schiffer, or I see these people that I really admire, and the guy that just fell on that does the ice skating. You cannot explain the pain, and I knew my children weren't there, but they were watching it on ES or on Channel 5, I guess,
Yeah.
uh, and I know Jeremy had all his buddies at the house. He goes, "Oh, my dad is not doing very good," and he was all upset, one of my sons, and you just you can't explain it. I don't ever tell anybody that I fell because the chair broke. I just it's fun to be able to say this after how many years since 1984. But I'll tell you one thing, when I rode out in that track and I looked up in the stands with 88,000 people with their little American flags cheering, man, I'll tell you, the hair in the back of your neck stands up, and I think it's the first time I really felt like I was welcome home after Vietnam.
Wow,
So,
that's
yeah,
big, Jim.
yeah,
And I've spoken with Sharon Hedrick, who won the 800
yeah.
meter event, and from University of Illinois, and she said the same thing. It was, what was it like sitting in that tunnel, just hearing that rumble before you guys rolled out?
It
But
was incredible.
that story about Howard Cosell and the limousine, I mean,
Well
that's classic all on its own.
Well, I got done. You'll like this part too. I mean, I don't even wanna be around Randy Snow and his crew and everybody else. The
'Cause
whole
it was
bunch are
very
all
clicky. Yeah, I know.
cheering and happy, and
Yeah.
I just go, "I just wanna go." So I kinda snuck out, just left the stadium. I got on one bus, there's one guy in the bus, and he was sitting in the back. And he goes, "How'd you do?" And I go, "Terrible." He said, "Yeah, I had a bad thing." It was, Evander Holyfield. So he and I were talking about, because he got kinda cheated out of winning the gold medal because the judge was from Hungary, and he was boxing the guy from Hungary, and he ended up getting a bronze medal instead of the so we were sitting there comparing notes, and out of that, we became friends, and, he's from Georgia, and
Oh, yeah.
every time I used to run the race, I'd see Evander Holyfield, and
That's
yeah,
classic.
yeah. I mean, it was a story upon story that I other than I look at my wall in my garage where I have all these plaques, and I look at, "Oh, yeah, look at that. Last place." How do you
Yeah.
even tell people you finished last place?
Yeah. No, I completely get it. Hey, Jim, let's move on to, skiing. So that was really your first love. That's what you were just destined to do. You loved it to no end, to the point where you quit your job, you wanted to go to and be a ski bum and just have a great time and live the life, of a skier, and there's really no opportunities because there's no such thing as a ski, and you developed the shadow ski, which is a self-loading ski. in so many ways, I mean, you're considered, they call you the founding father of adaptive skiing, which you have to be proud of, but just making a ski like that, how difficult was it? And then secondly, when you finally started skiing, was that the ultimate freedom for you? Did that supersede even racing?
I don't it did and it didn't. I think the biggest reason I wanted to be able to ski is because I have 3 children that I wanted to, get them on the hill. So, I wheelchair racing, it it it's hard to beat that. I mean, you know, uh, the ski, uh, I get a lot of credit for it, but there's, so many people the actual first mono ski that I skied on was made in Germany. It's called a mono bob with a leaf spring. So make that story quick. I realized that wasn't gonna then I met Jamie McCormick, who had an idea to take that monos bob, big tub, it looked like a toboggan, and drill a hole and build some aluminum. We had all this stuff to build all this stuff, and we stuck, a shock absorber. The shock absorber is the key, because what happened, the shock came out for the dirt bike, and that's what ended up being what allows us if you look at the Paralympics or all the sports nowadays, these guys are going mass air, and the shock is the key. The shock is doing it. So we put the shock together. I wanted to load on the chairlift. I wanted to unload the chairlift by myself. I wanted to be able to ski with my and all I wanted to do was ski intermediate runs. But, I would ski down the hill, and I've said this so many times. I heard somebody say it the other day. Sometimes I had to look down to see that I didn't have my legs. Felt like I was skiing with my legs. It was just that same feeling, and as you got good, the powder would go flying over your head, and so, yeah, and then got to take my kids, and we travel all over. I started manufacturing the mono ski, and we go to Japan and take one of the kids. I go to Europe and take the kids, and many, many stories. So,
Oh, Jim, yeah, that's just amazing. So you take that, you move on, and in the first Winter Paralympics that's actually recognized, 1992, Albertville, you win the downhill. The downhill is pretty much the event to win. That's like winning the 100 meters in the Summer Olympics. Just everything. How proud was that moment?
wow, I can't believe it. I have a video I may send it to you guys, and you could show it's a very short part of the downhill. Uh, I when I finished the downhill, well, first of all, you go to the start, and a couple days before, I blew out on the Super G because it was so foggy, you couldn't see a thing. That's my excuse anyway, and I missed the gate. So on the downhill that day, it was sunny, it was beautiful, and you start up in this shack, and I mean, you're ripping, and the speed has never been something that I don't mind doing.
What
So,
what ki what kind of speeds, Jim?
well, if you look at the video at the end, I was 102.7 kilometers, 62 miles an hour,
Fast
which
enough.
which is yeah. So, yeah, so I got to the end, and I honestly, I didn't know that I won it right away, and I was just so thrilled, and I turned up, and then I had the fastest time of the day, and that was it. So I won the
Incredible.
gold.
So you're both in the Wheelchair Racing Hall of Fame and the Ski Snowboard Hall of Fame. You've accomplished pretty much everything, that you could want to accomplish and stood for so much more. I wanna dabble on a couple other things and touch on them just because you were there, and in many ways, I saw these as moderately historic events. So, first thing I want to touch on, Jim, is the Boston crash in 1987. It was there's been so much misunderstanding about that race and what happened and how it happened and what transpired. And because I was there, you, me, Ferran, we ended up out front after this carnage. But everybody played, and there were a lot of implications too, Jim. First, everyone wanted to blame the wet roads, which had almost nothing to do with nothing. And everybody knew we were going through a lot of technological changes. Kanab goes down, field goes down with him. It was just carnage. So What's your memory of that? I mean, that race was so symbolic that I don't know, in some strange way, all these chairs crashing almost legitimized how serious we were about the sport. But
Yeah.
what happened on that day from your opinion?
Well, man, I love it. I that race was phenomenal. I loved every time I went to Boston, I loved it. They had really good success there. But, so right before the race, I remember Jim Knaub,
Yeah.
and great athlete. He was one that when I won it, I called him when he won it, and he said, "Well, good thing you weren't here. You I'd have beat you," because he won it the year between when I won it.
Mhm.
And I go, "Oh, Knab, you jerk." That's
Yeah.
I loved him. So
Yeah. Well, he
and
was,
so
he knew it.
yeah, and he talked about he said, I could get more hand rim if I'm straight up on the wheels," and he took the camber out of the wheels, and, the gun goes off, and I mean, I'm he's up front, and I forget to see video, I see film of this or pictures of it, and I'm saying, "Man, he's starting to get squirrely," and he was sitting there, it wasn't the wet roads, and next thing I know, he was kind of up on one wheel on one side, and then he went down, and then he went up, and I'm going, "He's gonna go over," and so
At
I'm thinking
roughly 40 miles an hour.
yeah, and I'm thinking, "Alright, come on, Jim, if he goes over to the left, all this goes through I better go to the right. If he's gonna"
Yeah.
and so I had all this stuff, and I had no idea what I was doing. The next thing he's over, and he's going over, and it was kinda, like, fast, but slow motion. Phew, I went around, and I just go, and next thing you know, I'm out in front, and I'm still in really good shape. I trained really hard to win it, and I go, oh, somewhere about 20 some miles, I think it was after Newton Hills, I hear this, I go, "What the heck?" And so I'm looking, here comes Andre Vigé,
The mad Canadian.
snot running down his face, blood on his arm. "Hey," he goes, "Joe Martinson." I go, "Oh, man, he beat me." That would have been my 2nd win. So I've had 2 seconds, 1 first, and 1 7th.
Jim, is it, even fathomable to really think of the fact that Marcel Hug from Switzerland, that he's running times under 1:15 for 26 miles? I mean, how do you even put that into perspective?
Yeah, I follow those guys because I appreciate them so much, and I follow 'em. I can't fathom it. Sports and Spokes was our Bible for knowing what's going on. So when I would read that George Murray did, a race in, uh, uh, say, Orlando, and I look at his time. So all you could do we didn't have the computer and all this stuff, so I'd look at all these times. So I always knew and I don't know what how these guys can go that fast. I always remember that if somebody goes to this speed, that means I can go to that speed or time-wise. I mean, that's always helped me in all my sports. I realized, well, shoot, if that guy's that good, but I don't know if I could have ever gotten 1 hour and 50 minutes, 15 minutes. Jeez, my
Yeah.
best time is 1 hour and 32, and that's when, uh, Scott Hollenbeck, we train a lot together out here in Washington when I had the company, and he took me from too much grip to no grip, where I was using more of that technique of and I went that's when I was getting in 90 made the '96 Paralympic team in Atlanta, so
Jim, you got, almost 6 decades of, adaptive sport. You've been a manufacturer, you've been a developer, you've done so much. You've been a skier, a racer, so I think you're pretty well qualified to speak on wheelchair racing, and as you just stated, you're a historian, you still love the sport as much as you ever did before, just having to watch it. I think that, it's safe to say that we've seen a real demise in wheelchair racing. The fields are getting smaller than ever. The same people are winning over and over again. In many ways, divisionally, we're getting pushed out of the Paralympics. There's been a lot of blame that's been passed around. People have blamed the bikes. People have blamed the cost of the chairs. I'm curious from your perspective, what happened to the sport and why has it gotten to the stage that it's at? And is it possible that it could come back?
Well, it's for sure, it's possible it could come back. The I think that it has to do with all of the price and all that, but hand cycles are pricey, racing chairs are pricey, tennis chairs are pricey. The problem is you've got to get the young people involved, and if you get the young people involved, uh, they'll it'll grow. Um, I I think biggest problem is how what Bob, you got hurt, you had a choice to play basketball and tennis, racing wheelchair, 10Ks, track, maybe something else, but now you could do you could do wakeboarding, you could do skiing. We had a water ski, but now they got all these you could do, snow skiing, water skiing, they have so many choices.
Yes.
We had I mean, I had one choice, an
Yeah.
everyday wheelchair. So, if we gotta keep the young people involved, but it's so easy to go to a gymnasium and play in a wheelchair basketball team and that, um, track, I love track. Track will get to that next level to go road racing. So, I don't know. I probably didn't answer it, but
Jim, great perspectives. We could sit here, we could talk more and more history because, we both. I've got a few less decades than you, but I think we both have a deep appreciation for the fact that sports definitely help cast us forward in life, and in many ways was a catalyst that helped us build bigger and better lives.
yes, for sure. No question.
Jim Martinson, just an icon to the sport. Thank you so much. Just wow.
Thanks, Bob. Great job. Appreciate it.